3:00, and if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Brian, would you mind leading us, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is the Planning and Zoning Board and local planning agency. It's an advisory board which makes recommendations to the county commissioners, who will make all the final decisions on these items. Item G5 is an LPA item. Items G1 through G4 on today's agenda will be heard by the county commission on November 2nd at 5 p.m. Item G5 is scheduled to be heard by the county commission on October 24th at 9 a.m. When a motion ends in any kind of split vote, a roll call vote may be taken to ensure accuracy. As a reminder, each member who makes a motion or a second needs to turn their microphone on so that your voice is on the record. Speakers for public comment on this agenda will be given 5 minutes. At this time, if any board member has had any ex parte communication regarding any application, please disclose so now. All right, seeing that, I ask for a motion for approval of the P&Z minutes from September 18th, 2023.
Move for approval.
Got a motion by Deb, a second by John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously. Okay, item 1.
Yes, item 1, Joseph S. Minnick requests change of zoning classification from GU to RR-1. Application is 23Z00064. Tax count number is 2001554, located in District 1.
Is the applicant here? Sir, if you could come up to the podium here and state your name and address for the record.
Joseph Minnick, 1968 Turpentine Road, Mims, Florida.
And a little bit about what you're wanting to do.
Rezoned to build a new single-family residence.
All right. 1 second, sir. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I bring it back to Ron. I'm just messing with you. There's our Mims guy and our North Brevard guy.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of this item.
A second.
Okay, have a motion by Ron, a second by Robert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
All right, thank you.
All right, sir. Have a good day.
You too.
Item G2.
Item number 2, FL and NC Investment Properties LLC requests change of zoning classification from RR-1 to AU. Application is 23Z00066. Tax count number is 2106726, located in District 1.
All right. Sir, are you the applicant? All right. And same thing, when you get to the microphone, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Janice Opatha, 1225 War Eagle Boulevard, Titusville, Florida.
All right. And a little bit about what you're wanting to do.
Residential to agriculture.
All right. Hold on 1 second. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Sir, if you could take a seat there in the front row, and ma'am, if you could come on up. And also your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Jamie Langford. My address is 1315 War Eagle Boulevard. We bought this property like 8 months ago, knowing that it was an RR. Had we known that somebody was interested in putting AU at the back corner side of our property, we would have never bought it, especially with a lot of birds that they want to move in and cages that are already there. The building is only got 2 1/4 size, covered. It's wide open. There's going to be lots of birds because there's already lots of cages back there. I work at the hospital 10-hour shifts. When I come home, I need to mentally and physically wind down. Listening to a bunch of birds is not going to do it for me.
Okay,
So,
all right.
all right, thank you.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I also was told by our realtor that it would lower our property value.
Okay.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, sir, if you could step back up to the podium, I'm going to bring it back to the board and see if anybody up here has any questions for you.
Sure, I want to address something, if you don't mind.
If you could get closer to the microphone, okay.
Yes, sir. Under Florida Right to Farm Act, I can bring the animals down there. I had the birds, animals for last 2 years. So it is only 1 year for the Right to Farm Act. So the reason I'm trying to get agriculture zoning for benefits, agricultural benefits, because I'm using it for agricultural purpose. So zoning does not stop me from taking the animals. They are adding more animals, or because that is under Farm Act.
I'm going to send that over to staff. Can you define that a little better when he's saying going back to the Farm Act?
Yes, sir. So generally, the Right to Farm Act is outlined under state statute, and it talks about similar, like agritourism-related activities where if there's a conflict between his ability to farm and local ordinances, if there's a conflict, we're not allowed to apply our ordinances to what he's trying to do out there. But again, that determination is through the property appraiser. It's not through the county attorney's office or through the board. So it's sort of a separate entity that makes that call.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any questions from the board for the applicant? Yes, sir. Mr. John?
Yes. Did I hear you say you already have birds on the property?
Yes, sir, I do.
And you have cages on the property?
Yes,
I
sir.
couldn't see them from the aerial.
Yeah, sure. We have some inside because in and out, we've been selling bunch and we've been bringing in bunch. So I do have some in the garage, some in the house. I have not put them out because I didn't want to bother everybody. I'm building new cages in the backyard, but the animals are not outside yet.
Yet?
Yeah, yet. But I had the permitting. I can prove FWC permit since 2021. I had the property at 2018. The first year I couldn't get it because it's the middle of the year. They do it every January. But I had permitting since then, FWC.
Okay. You have another structure on that property. Is that a
Yes.
horse barn or something?
Yeah, sure. That is where the birds are going to be.
That's where the birds are going to be.
So the cages are not outside as she described, they're inside, and I don't know how she went, but anybody could see the cages without going to my property. Because the back of the barn is facing their property, their lady's property. So somebody has to be at my property physically to see the actual inside the barn, how many cages or this or that.
Are you raising these birds for sale or for entertainment?
Sale.
Sale. Okay. How many are you going to have?
I'm going to have about 25 to 50 pairs of birds.
Pairs?
Pairs. Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
What kind of birds are these?
These are parakeet species.
The parakeets that I'm familiar with are little tiny things. Is that what you're
Issue,
talking about?
These are large parakeet, Indian ringnecks, Alexandrian parakeets. Those are parakeet species, but they're a little bit a large bird.
About how big are they?
They're under 200 grams. That's how they divide the species. Anything above 200 or under 200.
Can
So
you speak into the microphone? We're having a hard time picking you up.
Sure. So the birds are under 200. The USDA categorized birds as 200 above, 200 under. So these birds are under 200.
I have a question for staff.
Yes, sir.
So, are you familiar at all with this FWC permit?
Just vaguely familiar with that process.
And that overrides the use of the property?
My understanding is that zoning has, that you still have to meet the zoning requirements for a specific use. What I can tell you is that the RR1 zoning does not allow for the sale of any kind of
That's
bird.
what I was wondering. Okay. Because RR1, you're allowed to have horses and,
Yeah, it has to be accessory to the principal structure. So like, when I say accessory, it has to be for personal use. That means that you can have, if you are a horse person and want to ride, personally, you can have a couple horses. I believe it's on the square footage of the lot.
4 per acre.
Four per acre. And so if it was done for personal use, yes, you can have horses, but not, you can't have stables, you
Breed
can't
them.
have, yeah, you can't have any farm animals.
okay. Thank you.
Sir, how close to the school property are you? And do you have fencing between your property and schools?
Yeah, sure.
What kind of fencing?
Those are, the previous owner had installed like hog wire fencing all around.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
How close will the birds be to that property? I'm concerned about the kids that are on the school are going to think that's
No,
an
sure,
attractive
they're not going to
nuisance.
hear birds, but birds are a distance away from the school. They're quite a ways, probably about half a mile,
Okay.
almost. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, under Right to Farm Act, I can take the animals. None of these ordinance will apply. But the reason I'm trying to get the agriculture is to get the agricultural benefits, so I can insure the birds. But under Right to Farm Act, I can take the animals any given time. None of the city ordinance will apply.
So you can't insure the birds under RR?
No, sir. Because it's done by Avian Agriculture Department. No other insurance company do that. So that's the only way I can get the insurance on the birds. And they're thousands of dollars, so nobody will insure.
That's a very unique situation, and I'm not familiar enough with this FWC permit.
No, sir, it is a Right to Farm Act.
But you
It's a
said you were
statute. It's a
issued a
state
permit
statute.
through FWC after 1 year of residency, correct?
That is how I can prove I had animals and all the business sales all took place more than a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. So what he's doing now, you've been doing this for how long? You've had these birds on the property?
Since 2018.
2018, and
Yes, sir.
he's not in any kind of code enforcement. There's no code enforcement. He can do what he's doing. He just
No,
really can't, he
he
can have
cannot.
all the birds, but he can't sell them. That would be the code enforcement action here?
If, I'm just looking through the staff comments to see if there was a code enforcement. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, there's no open code enforcement cases on this property.
Is there a limit to how many birds he can have on the property under the current zoning?
Yeah, he's not allowed to have birds,
Period.
period.
Okay. So he's been doing this now, but if he gets the AU, then this would be allowed.
Correct,
Not only to having the birds, but to sell them.
correct.
Okay.
The only caveat to that, Bruce, is if the board would recommend AUL.
Right. which
And
then
so
he couldn't.
AUL would allow him to raise them on the property, but would
But
not
not
allow
sell
him to
them.
sell them from the
Right.
property.
Okay. Okay, well, okay, so you've been there for 4 years doing it, and you're coming here on your own free
Yes, sir.
will to
What
get
I'm
the
trying to
zoning. No
explain to-
one asked you to come in here to get the zoning to come into compliance. You're asking for your insurance purposes.
That's correct, yes. Because under, what I'm trying to say is under the Florida statute, I can
No,
take
I
that,
understand.
keep the animals, all that, their sales, all that applies, even though it's a residential zoning.
It is.
None of that applies under the Right to Farm Act.
It is. And from this map, it looks like he's abutting City of Titusville to the north,
Yes, that's where the school is.
and then, okay, and then City of Titusville wraps around on the south end of that subdivision, and then across that street, there's some AU or still out there. Okay, thank you.
All right.
One
So
thing
good.
that, I'd point out, Bruce, is that
Those are said.
if we do grant the AU, it could turn into a much larger operation. And do the residents want that?
No, I understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
He could, the code enforcement's never got him, he could do that tomorrow, until code enforcement catches up with him. But, yeah, no, I get
But
it.
the code
There would be no
enforcement-
limit under AU.
Yeah, I mean,
You
they
could
may
have
all,
100 birds, 1,000 birds.
Correct.
But under Florida Farm to Act, the Farm Act, I don't have a limit at the moment either. So I can have it large as I want at this
But
time, you know?
Per state
Which-
standards, yes.
but if that's true, then however we choose to vote, then you can take that up with the correct board or whoever is making those
That's right.
decisions.
Yeah, only reason I need the agriculture is for insurance purposes. If I decide to bring 1,000 more animals into the farm tomorrow, I can do it under Florida Right to Farm Act.
Why won't the insurance company insure you under residential?
Because it is agricultural purpose, the bird breeding is agricultural business.
So how many birds do you have now?
It's 50 pairs, maybe a little more than 50, but give or take. So it changes, it's vary. Breeding season, you could have 50, maybe times 3, because you will have babies and all that, so you have to get that, count those as well. So I buy birds and I sell birds, and small primates as well. So all that is covered under FWC.
Do you sell the birds on the property, or do you take them to?
No, sure. I don't sell any retail. I give it to pet shops and stuff like that. So I have brokers take all the birds away from me. They're located in Miami. So I don't sell anything in the property. But this whole permit thing is just for the insurance purposes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
We'll hold that motion for discussion. Yes, sir.
I have a question for staff. There's, what I can see, 3 properties somewhat nearby that are AU. They have a size requirement per acre to get the AU?
AU requires a minimum of 2.5 acres.
Okay, and this is 3 something, so he is meeting that because it looks a little smaller than some of the other AUs.
Yeah, the geometry of the lot can be a little bit misgiving. I do want to point out that what the applicant said, that he has primates on the property, so that would not be allowed on the AU zone property unless there's a CUP for it. So that's a separate process besides what this zoning request is.
Okay. Well, if he's been doing it for 4 years and no one's complained about it yet, I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a, hold on one second. Mr. Robert, have you met with any of your other residents with the, whose zoning is their RR1?
Yeah.
And looked at a development plan or a business plan and saying that you will limit it? Are you open for limiting the size of what you can do on this AU?
What do you mean by that, sir?
Well, we have a technique that the zoning board can recommend, is that you can have a business plan or a builder's development plan.
Yeah.
In other words, you limit what you are going to do to satisfy the residents in the area. In other words, they don't, I'm not sure if they want 200 birds, 200 pairs.
Yeah.
Or if you can say, I will voluntarily limit it to X number of pairs.
Yeah, sure. Right now, I just have the cages out there, the area she's talking about. Like I said, it's a horse barn, and nobody can even see what is inside the horse barn unless you go to my property. So I don't even know how somebody else know how many cages I have without going to my property at this point.
Well, it's not about the individual cages or even about the bird industry. It's about if you wish to raise pigs, if you wish to raise goats, if you wish to raise elephants.
Yeah.
That's would limit it only to your bird business.
Yeah, sure. Right now I have birds and I'm planning on putting fruit trees. That's the only thing I'm planning on doing there.
Okay, well, if you outline that and then you come back to us with a plan saying, I'd like orchards, I'd like to have some goats,
Yeah,
I'd
sure.
like to have some birds, and then you specify what your limitations are for that AU, because the AU right now is wide open, and the residents are saying that they came there for a residential area.
That's correct, but like I said, on the Florida statute, AU is wide open for me right now as well, even though it's residential zoning. I still can have pigs, goats, whatever I want on agriculture.
But this is
Yeah.
for your business, for your insurance criteria, is that correct?
Yeah, sure.
Right,
Just the
so
AU
to
zoning
make
is
it-
just for the insurance purposes,
To make it
correct?
compatible with everybody.
That's correct.
You
That's
could
correct.
say, I would want X, Y, and Z,
Yeah,
and wash it through your neighbors and see if they're okay with that. Are you open to that?
Mr. Chair, if I just may interject for a second. So if the board decides that the recommendation would include a BDP, binding development plan, we can work with the applicant and explain that to him and whether those restrictions may or may not be, so he's prepared for the board if the board decides to entertain that BDP recommendation.
Are you open for a binding development plan?
yeah, sure, I'm open to it as long as I can get agriculture, I can get the exemption from yearly.
Well, you would be writing it.
Okay, all
You
right.
would write it and come back to the board.
Okay, all right.
So can I make a motion that we table this until?
current
Well,
motion.
we Okay. have one motion already, so we're going to strike that, or you want to, or do you want to add,
You have to call the question.
do you want to add the BDP to your motion?
No, because we don't know what the BDP is going to do. We don't know what's in the BDP. You're just saying, add a BDP to it.
Chair, hold on a
So,
second, I have a question for staff. You said that he has to have a CUP in order to have primates on the property.
That is correct.
Can he has to come back before us in order to do that, am I correct?
That is correct. That's a separate application, review,
Right.
and that.
So if he wants to get AU approved today and then come back and get a CUP, that's fine, but they're asking about a binding development plan, which they're gonna have to come back anyways. So would it not be appropriate to get it tabled so he can do a BDP and a CUP at his next visit?
That's a possibility. What we can do is if this board decides that, hey, I want to have a BDP to limit the number of birds, to limit, if you outline those restrictions, we can work with the applicant to make sure that he understands what the BDP does, and so with that. But if on the flip side of things, if you're not comfortable enough without seeing that first, we can, you can request that this be continued to the next P and Z meeting.
when do we do that?
How many primates do you have on the property?
I don't have any primaries at the moment. They're all in North Carolina.
But you
Because
have
I need a
plans-
certain amount of hours for primates, certain primates. So those hours has to be, even though I have them in North Carolina, we don't need that hours from the FWC permitting wise. So I have to meet the hours before I can bring them in.
But you do plan to bring them in the future?
Yeah, sure. They're going to be class 3 primates, but not large ones like marmosets and stuff like that. They're smaller than a macaw parrot.
So if that's the case that you're gonna be bringing them, what he's saying is you won't be allowed to have them there unless you have the CUP, which means you have to come back in front of this board to do that.
Yeah, sure. What I'm trying to say is, under Right to Farm Act, I don't need any of those permits. I can bring the animal monkeys even tomorrow without any permitting.
Well,
The only reason is for the insurance purposes.
I see our attorney is speaking back there. Do you want to enlighten that situation a little bit about the Right to Farm Act versus the zoning?
Right, so again, I'll just like to clarify, that determination under the Right to Farm Act is resting with the property appraiser. They go out and determine what's a
Right.
bona fide agricultural use. And there's also best management practices that need to be followed. I'm sure they're outlined by the FWC in that regard as well. So with respect to our zoning, those are local regulations. And so the state has it set up where if there is an agritourism-related activity, it would essentially preempt the county's ordinances from being applied. But until that determination is made by the property appraiser, our zoning still remains in place.
But is that just for agritourism?
In this particular case, yes, and for bona fide agricultural use. It's determined under the same state statute, which is 193.461. So both the Right to Farm Act and the agritourism statute both revert back to that one.
But he would not be able to sell off the property, correct?
According to according to the current zoning on the property, no.
Okay.
Which he's
Yeah.
not technically selling
Which-
now because he's taking them someplace else and selling them.
I don't know, I mean,
I don't know what's going on with the property right now.
yeah.
According to his explanation,
Yeah, sure.
he's taking the birds someplace else and selling them. People are not coming to the property and buying them like retail.
Okay. But still, RR1 does not allow you to have birds of any kind on the
Right.
property.
Yeah.
So, this is for staff. So what you're saying is, until the property appraiser makes a determination, the zoning can be enforced?
Yes, sir, that's correct. So essentially what would happen theoretically, if there was a code enforcement action, we would proceed, and then his defense would be, I have a determination by the property appraiser, which means that your codes do not apply to me.
So, back to the applicant, have you applied through the property appraiser's office?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay, and what's the status of it?
Property appraiser only can do a
Can you speak into the
agricultural
microphone?
agricultural exception permit once a year. But when I mean, it's the same thing as applying for agricultural zoning right now, but it is yearly permit instead of stable permit like all year round, like unlimited permit, I would say.
So has it been granted to you by the property appraiser?
Yeah, sure. It is under beekeeping, so the birds goes under that agricultural use. So it has been granted, and I had already paid for it and all that. So under FWC, I would say they take over the property appraiser as well. If there's any issues with the property appraiser, FW is the one who's dealing with the property appraiser at this point.
So did I hear correctly, you have one for beekeeping?
Yeah, sure. But the birds are under beekeeping. The exotic
Is that the
parrots and stuff like
classification
that.
for it?
Yeah, sure.
Boy, this is getting a little confusing.
It is confusing because they don't have everything in black and white, and it's not a trade. Everybody do the exotic birds, so it considered as beekeeping and farming, but it's agriculture purpose end of the day.
They're actually grouped together in the listing under the zoning, under permitted uses at AU. Fowl raising and beekeeping are noted together, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So I kind of think of it as like fish, like ornamental fish.
Yeah.
That's still farming. And it sounds like if you've gone through the property appraisers, it's all under the agriculture use, permitting,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, then you're at law. So now you're just wanting to ensure your business, so to
Correct.
speak, so the rights to your property and having the agricultural use permitting. So I would be in agreeance of without the BDP, and because you're already following the law, everything's through, you just want to change it to where you get insurance and also the agricultural benefits of your property.
Yeah.
All right, so seeing that, then I have a motion by John, a second by Logan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
3 opposed. Well, good luck at the county commissioners meeting.
All right, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Ron, Robert, and Ben were nay.
It's going to turn into a full-blown operation.
Okay, item 3.
Yes, Hope Episcopal Church, Inc. requests CUP for wireless communication, telecommunication facility and broadcast tower in a PUD zoning classification. Application is 23Z00055, and its tax account number is 2604194 located in District 4.
Okay, and are you the applicant, ma'am?
I'm counsel for the applicant.
If you could state your name and address for the record.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mary Solik, 121 South Orange Avenue, Suite 1500, Orlando, Florida. I'm legal counsel for Gulfstream Towers, LLC, the applicant. And with me today is the rector of Christ Episcopal Church, Cynthia Brust. She's in the audience. Pastor Brust.
Okay. A little bit about what you're wanting to do, ma'am.
Absolutely. Can I use the?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Gulfstream proposes to erect a 120-foot unipole telecommunications tower on property that is currently developed with Christ Episcopal Church. And how am I going to do this so you can still hear me? This is Wickham Road up here and Interlochen Avenue. This is the church property. I'm doing this backwards. And the tower location is up in the corner of the little notch on the church property. I don't know if you can see on this map, but the uses surrounding this particular property are generally commercial in nature. Directly to the north is an FPL substation. To the east are 3 little office buildings. There's a Chase Bank and a dentist office and Tires Plus, and then additional office buildings to the south of that. Then the church property, and then there is a retention pond, and the closest residential development is the Suntree neighborhood to the south of that. So to the north, east, south, and west, this property is all surrounded by PUD zoning and commercial uses. The parent tract on this particular property is part of the Suntree PUD, and it has a commercial future land use designation. So this property was always envisioned to have a commercial use. So we meet all of the performance criteria under your code for towers. Your code caps towers at 120 feet. This one is 120 feet. We are utilizing a mitigating design. That is the unipole. All the antennas and the cabling will be internal to the pole. There is a picture in your package, an elevation drawing that shows it's just a slender pole.
Right.
There is a 240-foot separation requirement from towers to residential structures. The circle, and that is 2 times the tower height. So that's how it comes out to be 240 feet in this particular instance. The circle on that map indicates that radius. And the building that you see on the south side of that circle, that's the church property. We don't come anywhere close to the residences to the south. Your staff has determined that we meet all of the requirements of your code and that we are consistent with your comp plan. And the general conditional use criteria, the specific special use or conditional use criteria for towers, and your 8 administrative criteria. Do you have any questions for me? I know there might be people in the audience that want to speak on this. I'd like to be able to rebut those comments. But do you have questions for me before they speak?
Seeing that, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions for the applicant before we hear comments?
Yes. I just had one, if you don't mind. Just where's the access road going to come out?
It comes off of Interlochen. It generally follows the existing access to the church.
Okay. It's gonna
Oh, you
just
can see it
continue.
on here.
Yep. Okay.
And then,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. John.
Okay. What's the county policy for spacing of towers? Not from residential, but from each other.
Yeah, they do have that.
The county has a master plan that was done some years ago. There isn't a set distance as far as what they're required to be. It is based on the capacity of the cell tower and the signal strength. So as long as the applicant can show that there's a need as far as capacity and service calls, then that would be the
So there is an
the
existing
need
tower
to show.
map here.
That they're, okay, they'd have to supply a need to.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
part of the that's
All
part of
right,
the consultant review.
Can
Okay,
I
thank you.
pop in on that one? Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Your code requires that we demonstrate that there are no existing structures within a mile of the tower that we can co-locate on. And we submitted that documentation to the staff, and your staff reviewed it as well as your outside consultant and determined that there weren't any structures within a mile of this site that we could locate on.
Okay. I read in your documents that the primary carrier, which is T-Mobile, are having problems with capacity on their other towers, and that's why they want to do this. Isn't there a way that they could upgrade their existing towers to have more coverage for the increasing number of users?
That question is probably above my pay grade, but I
know it's not legal.
I know just enough about that to be dangerous. There is a limit to those antennas have a limit to the amount of, to the capacity that they have. So they do whatever they can to maximize the capacity of the existing sites, but at some point they have to do one in between to offload. And they submitted that offloading information, that data. Your consultant asked for the data on the traffic on the two sites. And the consultant reviewed it and said, yes, they do have a capacity issue here, and they do need this site to offload it.
Okay. I noticed that the frequencies that were submitted with the package here do not include 5G.
Yeah.
They're only dealing with 4G capacity. And everybody's moving to 5G now, which makes me curious as to why they're not stipulating that they're going to do 5G here, which also is a stronger signal. It's higher in gigahertz, and it's unproven technology as far as radiation to people nearby.
I am not going to.
Over your pay grade. Okay,
Well,
I get it.
I just feel uncomfortable answering that question for
Okay.
T-Mobile. I know that they gave the information that's required under your code, and your consultant looked at it and didn't question it.
Okay.
And that's
there-
why you have an outside consultant, is because they understand all of this.
Right. I think there's a similar tower on Merritt Island, off of Courtney, that's behind the FP&L station. No, Bell South, excuse me. Are you familiar with that one? Isn't that one of theirs too? Do you know the one I mean? It just went up last year. It's a big white,
I'm not
tall
I'm not
tower
aware
with
of it.
nothing hanging on it, except a flag once in a while.
Everything's internal to the pole.
Right, everything looks like it's internal to the wall, the pole. So this is a similar situation.
Yes, it just won't have a flag on it.
There's one in Palm Bay by a church. They put a cross on it and everything. So
Right.
which this will just be a pole, but there's similar things like that in neighborhoods throughout the county.
Right.
Hold on,
One more,
Warren.
I'm not finished. I wasn't finished, sorry. If you remember, when we had that other issue where we were talking about unlimited Gs, we were going to give them a blanket approval for increasing new technologies to the area, and I objected to that at the time because I felt that if we don't restrict them, that we could be irradiating ourselves. And because of the lack of 5G noted in this package, I don't feel comfortable with this.
Okay.
Okay? Now I'm done.
Okay.
All right, ma'am, let me go to the audience. Is there anyone who want to speak for or against this item? All right, sir, if you could come up and get as close as you can to that microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Doug Knight. How you doing, Board? I'm the Vice President at Cypress Cove Condominiums.
We need your address, too. I'm sorry.
Address?
Yes.
7667 North Wickham Road, condo unit number 723.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm the Vice President in the Condo Association back there in my fellow board member treasurer back there, Pete, if you want to invite him up too also, but I've been either president or vice president of the board and an owner of a unit living there off and on for the last 15 years. We have went through the housing crash, major redevelopment. We've done parking lots, we've done roofing, major renovations, and our property values have went like 3 times what they were 10 years ago. I realize the rest of Florida has also, but one of our main attractions is an established neighborhood. We have tons of beautiful oak trees. You come in off of the Wickham Road entrance, it looks like you're going into a Caribbean island. If you come in on the Interlochen entrance, which is across the street from the Hope Church where they want to build the tower, you have like an umbrella, these beautiful oak trees. And everybody says, curb appeal is the #1 attraction to our association. We're really proud of what we've improved, what we've grown on, and the beauty of the place. So what we see is at the corner of Interlochen and Wickham, which is where, excuse me, at the corner of Interlochen and Wickham, on one side you have Wells Fargo Bank, the other side you have Chase Bank. Publix is kind of like right there beside the Wells Fargo Bank. Once you start down Interlochen, it's all residential. All right. I, for one, I think most people probably agree, a church isn't really commercial or industrial. Churches are often welcome parts of residential neighborhoods and communities. Love the church. It's a beautiful church. Nice addition to the residential area. We see the tower as a detraction from that, taking away from the beauty. And it would be the only thing that I'm aware of on Interlochen that would be considered commercial and industrial. So therefore, that's why I would oppose that. Ask you to agree.
All right. Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak for or against this item? And this, if you could state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Gardner Peter C., 7667 North Wickham, Unit 1310. This is a commercial enterprise in a residential neighborhood, and I'm against it for that purpose. Along with what Mr. Knight said, as we have beautification of the property, anything else is a detriment.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Mine is a no vote. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And also, if you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is Marla Veit, 430 Carmel Drive, Melbourne. I bought a house in Suntree 7 months ago, and I moved from Heritage Isle in Vieira. And the reason I bought my house where it is for the beauty. Suntree is a gorgeous, gorgeous, developed neighborhood. Vieira, I bought that house 7 years ago, and the building and the chaos and the traffic and all of the commercial stuff is not what I wanted. When I bought my house in Heritage Isle, none of the development on the south side of Wickham was there. And so I moved away from Heritage Isle in Vieira to Suntree for the serenity, the nature, the development. I mean, that was finished. Nothing's going to change. It's going to be what it is. Shops go in and out, but nothing like a big commercial cell phone tower. So I'm opposed for that reason.
All right. Well, thank you. Anyone else want to speak for or against this? And the same thing, please, sir, your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Joseph Gerda. I live at 1060 Parkridge.
If you could.
I live at 1060 Parkridge Place. My name is Joseph Gerda. And the reason that I'm here today is to state my opposition to the cell tower. My understanding is that homes near cell towers tend to have lower property values. And I think that is because if most people given the choice, they would rather live not in proximity to a cell tower. I think this proposal would allow a private company to profit at the expense of the surrounding community. And I think that, in the long term, if we have lower property values, that's going to mean lower property taxes for the county. Also, to the gentleman's comment about the 5G, I think that that is a valid point. We don't know what's going there in the future. And the other thing is I wanted to point out a few things that are a little bit misleading about what what council said. So the first thing is she presented this as primarily a commercial area, and that's not really true. So the thing is, Suntree is actually a very large residential community with about 4,500 homes. Also, right on the other side, there's Baytree, which is also a very large community. So you have a very large number of residential homes that are in very close proximity to this particular location that's being proposed.
Okay.
So for that reason, the effect on property values, the potential long-term health implications depending on what technologies are there in the future, and the fact that we're basically putting something commercial in a residential area where there are a large number of homes, large number of people that would be adversely impacted. I am hoping that you will reject this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to speak for or against this item? All right. Ma'am, if you could come back up. And you do see some of the public's concerns.
I do. And I do want to reiterate that the church property is part of a commercial tract within the Suntree PUD, and that was a commercial tract when all these folks bought their properties on a residential tract. So it's been a commercial tract since the inception of the PD. Your code requires that we be separated from residential structures 240 feet. We're over 600 feet from the closest residential structure. And we heard about property values, and most zoning codes do not regulate the impact of property values on uses. Your comprehensive plan and your land development code in the general criteria for conditional uses does address impact to property values, but it very specifically limits the consideration of the impact to abutting properties. These homes do not abut the church property. There's an intervening 4.72 acre retention pond in between the church property and the residential homes. The tower has been located or placed on the church property we've tucked it up in the northeast corner as far away from the homes as we can get. And that also allows the on-site vegetation on that church property to help screen and buffer the impact or the view of the tower from off-site vistas. So we've placed it to minimize, to increase the distance and maximize the buffering and screening on site. The health effects, this is not the first tower you all have heard. You all know that the Telecom Act prevents you from either approving or denying towers based on their health effects, no matter what equipment the wireless carriers put on the tower. The FCC has preempted you on that issue, and it's not part of your code. Let me see if there's anything else I need to. And none of these residents have brought forth any specific evidence of what the view shed will actually be from their sites to this particular tower, and we are utilizing a mitigating design. Do you have any other questions for me?
I do have one question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Roberts.
This is a for-profit commercial enterprise?
It is. It is. And it will get, and the church, they have a lease with the church, yes. And the property appraiser will carve out that little compound area on the church property and tax it as a commercial use. And under the terms of the lease, my client pays those taxes. But yes, the church will benefit from the income from the tower.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I'm just going to start talking. I'm not, it's talking to the board and everybody. I would imagine the additional load needed for the tower is coming from growth in the community, which is probably not coming from a well-established community like Suntree and Baytree. It's probably coming from Vieira, where they're building more homes, and there's more of a need for this. So I kind of don't know if this is the good location for something like this, considering Suntree's been there for quite some years, and they've been, functioning with internet and phone calls, I would imagine, just fine. So that's kind of my idea on this. I'd love to hear the rest of the board's, concerns, or if it's something they're willing to support, but I just don't know if Suntree should be, the residents of Suntree in a mature and finished community should be penalized by having a 120-foot tower built in their neighborhood when they've been there for 30 years.
Any other comment from the board?
I would agree with you. That's the biggest concern that I'm having with this right now. I think that property values are important, and this area has been built for a very long time, and it's a beautiful area, and they should not be penalized because of the growth that's happened over and above the Baytree area. So I do have a concern.
You have a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So if this is part of the Suntree PUD, or is it the Baytree PUD? Which PUD is this part of?
It's part of Suntree.
And is there anything in the PUD that allows or prohibits this type of use in the PUD?
Not that we're aware of. So a CUP can be requested as part of a PUD zoning.
And it needs no hearing from the Suntree Association that
There's no
governs the PUD?
there's no code requirement that has to happen.
All right.
It doesn't mean it can't. It's just that we don't have that process set up in our code.
Okay. Was there a letter or position from the Suntree board on this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you know where that nearest tower is? Because I used to live in Baytree, and I could see a cell tower to the southwest, and I could have sworn it was probably on the zoo's property. Do you know where that nearest tower is?
There it
Is
goes.
this the one here?
This is from your
This is the
consultant's
property?
report. So the very center proposed site, that's the site that is on the church property. And then you see the 1 mile radius rings. You get 1 mile and 2 mile, and you see all the other locations around there.
So there's no tower within that 1 mile radius?
No. And then we also submitted, again, the consultant reviewed the T-Mobile information, and you don't have your name card up, so I don't. Ben. You have a concern about the need for this tower coming from outside of this community. The cell signal does not travel that far. The need is coming because in this area, there is a lack of coverage because of the overcapacity of the sites. And I'm going to dig for the T-Mobile information that your consultant reviewed.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm over here.
Yes, sir.
There is a tower along the linear park trail. I'm trying to find it on the aerial to see. I don't know as far as what the distance is from that, but there is one out there.
So the pink sites are the existing T-Mobile locations. The blue site is the proposed site. This is This is without this particular location, and it is hard to see, and it's not a coverage site. T-Mobile needs this site for capacity. And you can see that this site is really sort of in between the sites it has here, 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 and here, and along Wickham Road. I mean, part of the need for the tower is the travel along Wickham Road. And that's thereafter. And I understand that it's hard to see. It's very hard to see for the layperson. But then again, T-Mobile gave the traffic data to the consultant to demonstrate that they have a need for an additional location in this particular area to handle the cell phone traffic in that area. It's not traffic coming from a mile away or 2 miles away. It's the cell phone traffic in that particular area. And we all know we're all using our cell phones and our wireless devices more than ever. So Suntree may be built, but 10 years ago, you might have had 2 cell phones in the house. Now you have 2, and then you've got iPads, and you've got people working from home, and you've got kids at home doing homework. The demand is ever increasing. And just because a community is built and has been built for 30 years doesn't mean it's not driving greater traffic. The pastor reports to me the service in Suntree is horrible.
Are there not other towers that you can lease?
Not,
Because there's other cell phone carriers in the area, I would imagine.
right, this tower will be capable of supporting the needs of 3 other carriers in addition to T-Mobile. But we are required, under the terms of your code, to demonstrate there isn't a structure within a mile that we can use. And we submitted our information. Your wireless consultant did his own independent research, and his report confirms that there are no available structures in this area on which we could co-locate. So, you have this person that you hire that's independent that double checks our homework.
Any other questions from the board?
I was just trying to look at some of those other towers to see what kind of proximity they are to other neighborhoods in the Suntree area or Viera area. And it appears that...
While you're doing that, I want to point out, your code allows towers. This was the point I was going to make earlier that I forgot. Your code allows towers in residential properties. You allow them in every zoning category. You do not have a per se incompatibility policy of cell phone towers and residential uses. They're allowed as conditional uses in every category, up to certain heights. And 120 is the cap for an urban area.
Right. So you have the one over there to the northeast is about 200 feet away from the closest house, which is Suntree Forest at the end of Welty Drive. That's in Suntree, correct?
It's hard for me to... Are you doing
No,
research there?
Yeah,
at
I'm
the
just
podium?
looking at where they are. I mean, they seem like they're relatively close to a lot of residential developments north of Wickham, so.
Your code only requires that they be 2 times the tower height away from a residential
Right, I
structure.
understand, yeah.
So that doesn't
So I
surprise
was
me.
just wondering if there was any issues with those residents and the tower that's been there for who knows how long. Probably not.
I think for every study you might find on the internet about proximity to cell towers being a detriment, you'll find another article about people wanting to live in communities with robust wireless coverage. I've started pulling, in some jurisdictions, I've started pulling statistics from the sheriff's office to find out how many E911 calls come in from wireless handsets these days. And I've just pulled it from Orange County, and I've pulled it from Hillsborough County. And it's like 85 to 86% of all 911 calls come in from a wireless handset. A good, strong, dependable, reliable, robust wireless coverage is an element of public safety.
Well, that's what you said earlier. There's going to be a need, whether it's today or tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move that we do a recommendation of approving this.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Ron, a second by Brian. All those in,
Does the motion include the conditions as part of the staff comments?
Yeah,
Yes.
I would hope that it does.
okay, a motion by Ron, a second by Brian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Robert opposed, Ben opposed, John opposed, and Debbie opposed. Correct?
Correct.
It's 4 to 4.
5 to 4.
5 to 4. Okay. Okay.
Do we have that?
Is that a tie?
So is that a tie or?
Nope.
5-4. So that passed. All right. Good luck with the county commissioners. All right.
Everybody here was opposed to vote?
Yeah, this is the next one. Everybody voted.
Okay, next item.
Yes, item number 4,
Yeah, who's an
NCA
alternative? Who's an
Santoriello, Francis Santoriello,
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer L. Straight, and James J. Straight, and we have Jennifer L. Straight again, but a request change of zoning classification from RU-1-9 to RU-1-11, application 23Z00074. Tax account numbers are 2863-326 and 2801-026.
All right, before I bring the applicant
Yeah.
here, Ben, you had a question about the previous item.
Well, let's make sure that all voting members today are allowed to vote. Is there an alternate here?
Logan, you're alternate, correct?
Is his primary here?
No.
He's allowed to vote because there's not more than 10.
Okay, all right, cool.
All right. Item G4, you're the applicant, sir. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Clayton Bennett. I'm with Bennett Engineering and Consulting, address 4940 Ranch Lane Road, Melbourne, Florida, 32934. I'm here on behalf of the owners to rezone the property. We'll try to keep it simple. We're not dealing with any agricultural use or any cell towers.
Thank you.
The subject property was, once it was a combined parcel, and about 20 years ago, the properties were subdivided, meeting the required zoning lot size requirements, but once it was subdivided, the zoning wasn't consistent with the future land use. So we're here today to rezone the property to bring it consistent with the future land use, which actually makes the lot sizes increase. So we're going from RU-19, we're going up to RU-111, so the lot sizes would increase in lot width and area. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. But again, we're here because of staff requiring the zoning to be consistent with the future land use.
Well, that should be pretty simple. One second, Mr. Bennett. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, sir, if you could come up, state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. I'm Master Sergeant James Strait. Current address is, I'm totally blanking right now. Wow, that's amazing. 166 Alameda Drive, Palm Bay, Florida, 320908. The new address is the property that's in question. My wife and I, that's my wife's name, Jennifer L. Strait. We own both properties, and I just wanted to be here to make sure everything was going smooth and that I understand the processes that are going through. We don't care where the line is. We own both lots. We just want to build our home.
All right.
That's it.
So you're saying you're for this?
Yes, sir, 100%. I just want to get everything rolling.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bennett, could you come back up, please? Well, is there anyone else want to speak for or against this item? Okay, we're good. Seeing that, I bring it back to the board. Any questions for Mr. Bennett?
Move for approval.
Got a motion by Debbie, a second by Logan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Mr. Chair, can you please repeat? I missed the motion or in the second.
It was a motion by Debbie, a
Debbie?
second by
Logan.
Logan, thank you.
Mr. Chair, on the next item, we're going to do some staff change. If you could just give us 30 seconds. Billy's going to come up.
All right.
Looks like it met the lot size. Oh, was this left over? Major transit stop.
Good afternoon. This is coming back to you after you continued this item at your September 18th meeting. Today we have joining us is Terry Jordan, Director of Brevard County Transit, to answer any questions you might have. At that last meeting, you requested that each stop that would currently meet staff's proposed definition be mapped. That was provided and attached to the agenda item. I did want to take a moment just to recap a couple key points. The issue of defining major transit stops is only for use in reducing reduced parking requirements associated with affordable housing developments, as is required under the Live Local Act. The Live Local Act says the county, quote-unquote, shall consider reduced parking for those developments within a half mile of a major transit stop that qualify under the Live Local Act. It does not require the county to approve reduced parking in these circumstances, only to consider doing so. While the county already has procedures for obtaining reduced parking requirements, some of which are probably more straightforward to use in most circumstances, the way the Live Local Act was written requires us to have this avenue as well. We are required by law to have a definition of a major transit stop. The question is what that definition should be. With that said, we are seeking this board's review of the staff's proposal today. The board can either recommend moving forward with staff's proposed definition of major transit stop or recommend a different one to the Board of County Commissioners, and we will present that recommendation to the board when it considers the item at its next meeting on October 24th.
All right, thank you, sir. Hearing that, I bring it to the board. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Robert.
The question is, under major transit stop, that the major transit stop or station located at a point two or more transit routes or lines or different modes of transportation. And so, but what was presented looks like they're just bus stops. Are there more than two modes of transportation coming to these locations?
I believe the definition we have is a major transit stop located at the meeting point of two or more transit routes or lines, or of different modes of transportation.
Yeah, the definition by DOT is page 24 of their definition says, more than one travel mode, including potential the four major highway modes, auto, truck traffic, bicycle, bus transit, and pedestrian, aviation, rail, and seaports. So, I mean, it looks like it's just going to be buses.
For the purposes of this definition that we proposed, it mostly contemplates buses, as that's the mode of mass transit most commonly used in Brevard County.
Okay, but, so every bus stop can be a major transit stop? That's what I'm looking at. I know I'm parsing hairs here, but a major transit stop says it's an intersection between two transits.
A meeting point of two or more transit routes or lines So, yes, there are bus stops, yes. Not all bus stops, but certain ones.
Okay. Just throwing the word intermodal in there just confuses and makes it different from Federal Highway Administration and DOT transits and other things. So anybody who can bring clarity to that. Can it just be a normal bus stop? Is that what we're looking at?
Mr. Jordan.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Mr. Robert, to answer your question, every bus stop will not be considered a major transit stop. As defined here, a major transit stop is where two or more bus routes intersect or stop to allow for passengers to disembark and board the second vehicle. However, as many of you are probably well aware, our anticipation and our hope is that Brightline will, well, I can only speak for myself, so maybe others don't, but let's say if Brightline were to implement a station here in Brevard County, then that could be considered a major transit stop. Or any other type of service. So let's just say if we have rail, or if we have something like Greyhound, where we were to commingle services, those are things that could potentially be major transit stops. However, for the purpose of this, the only mode of transportation currently in use in Brevard County is transit service that's provided by Space Coast Area Transit.
Correct. That's where I was going with all of this, is that we have only one transit, not intermodal.
That is exactly correct currently.
Okay. And so the hopes and desires of the county is that we would have more intermodal.
Well, yes. And working with our staff from the TPO and others, yes, that is the goal.
So, and again, that's just, I've worked DOT for a very long time, majority of my career, and intermodal, and been overseas, lived overseas, know full well what intermodal is all through Europe and other continents. It just struck me odd that we only have a single mode and we're calling them major transit spots.
As Billy mentioned, the definition was needed for the purposes of the Live Local Act, and as mentioned here, we crafted a definition from the FDOT guidelines. We pretty much just took the language directly from FDOT. Exactly. So I mean, there and what you pointed out does point to other modes of transportation, but really and truly we pulled it directly specifically for transit, fixed route transit, that is.
Okay. All right, no further.
Mr. John.
Good to see a face from a voice, so good to
Thank
meet
you,
you.
sir.
We had a conversation last week when I was going through this. These maps, then I thank the staff for putting these together. Most of them are in incorporated areas, though. They're not in non-incorporated. So what I did, I compiled a list of 6 spots where 2 bus routes do intersect, 2 different routes. And I submitted that to the county legal department, and I have them here. Can we add those to these maps?
If you don't mind, I'm not sure if the rest of the board had the opportunity to see
They
the
didn't submit
requests.
them.
Okay.
No, we didn't.
So, do you mind if I read it?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So the language is, any intersection of 2 major bus line routes. So my concern with that is, there may be a location where 2 routes cross at an intersection. They may not be considered major transfer points because you may not have a lot of activity between the 2 routes. I'll give an example of one such location, State Road 520 and US 1. We have the Route 1 traveling in from Titusville, and the Route 4 traveling in from, both either in or outbound from Cocoa Beach. Those are 2 locations, well, that's one location where 2 routes cross. However, there's usually not a lot of connectivity activity there, specifically because both buses are going into the Cocoa Terminal. So the major transit stop, like I mentioned, our definition is primarily for the purpose of where passengers get off one bus and then board another bus to continue their trip to their destination. So even if you have two intersecting streets, you may not have hardly any activity.
But the definition doesn't speak about activity. It doesn't say if you have 20 or more people per hour exiting or entering the bus at that station.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that criterion is valid. I mean, for example, some of the unincorporated areas that are shown on these maps, one was the Merritt Island Mall, okay? It's not an intersection of two routes, it's only one route, just a stop,
Actually,
okay? But it is going, a lot of people would probably be using it. But then down the road on 520, you have the hospital, and that wasn't included. And I would think you'd probably get a similar number for those. So I don't know if body count is really relevant here. What I was trying to find was opportunities for developers to take advantage of this, okay? And since, as I stated earlier, most of the maps are in incorporated areas, and we really need to deal only with the unincorporated areas, I'd like to see more opportunities for the developers to have these stops and be able to develop within a half a mile of them, so that, and they can get the parking reduction requirement.
One thing the board might wish to consider is just the stability of whatever definition it chooses. We don't, a huge fluctuation might be something the board might wish to avoid.
How do you mean?
If you were to go to counts, for example, we don't want the definition to change too much from one day to the next. It's going to have some changes over time. There's no question about that, as stops are added and things like that. But some level of stability might be something the board might wish to consider while crafting its definition.
I've got some comments on that.
Yes, sir. Mr.
I
Bruce.
almost agreed with John to a point. I think only because I've been really involved in affordable housing codes. When Melbourne introduced theirs, I'm on the HBCA Coalition for Affordable Housing. So we kind of done some research on some of these things. I don't think we're reading the definition correctly, because I don't think it's major transit stops. It's not major stops, it's major transit stops. If SCAD is a major transit, all stops should be defined, because you won't put an affordable housing project that's not near a bus stop, period. So they look at it, is there a bus stop there? They don't care if it's a big one or a little one, as long as it's there, then that's one of the check. So to not include all bus stops, because I think it means major transit, any stops that they have. That's the way I think it's supposed to be read. So I think that all bus stops should be applicable.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So taking on Bruce's definition, strike the word major, just call it a transit stop?
I don't know how you get that to a definition, but I think that should be included as a major transit. And any stop that a major transit makes, it qualifies. I mean, all this is really doing is allowing them to be considered for a parking reduction. So why not why not do the ones where they're actually going to be, if you're going to get an affordable housing project, it's hard enough as it is, why not give them the benefit of allowing them to have it at any bus stop? That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'll respond with one thing. I do agree with you, because we do get the calls and requests outside of course, the unincorporated area for transit service whenever developers are considering, for example, right now on US 1 outside of Palm Bay, we have 2 such developments going in that they're looking to include transit shelters as a part of their development just for that purpose. So I don't disagree with your statement at all.
I would just add that I think the idea behind this and the reasoning behind this is the fact that we have developers out there that obviously, need to make money in what they're building, and we want to make sure that every aspect of our community is represented and that they have a place to live, work, and play. And the whole idea is to get this in as many places as possible. Not every developer is going to be able to make it affordable and be able to do it. There's very small percentage that actually will be able to, but let's give them as many opportunities as we possibly can to make that affordable and make that happen.
So you looked like you was wanting to say something earlier.
I was just going to reiterate what Bruce said, that all we're doing here today is establishing a definition for the consideration of a parking reduction.
Right.
We already in our code have other mechanisms that would allow for reductions in parking for affordable housing or other housing projects. Our parking code takes those, parking reductions into consideration. The locational criteria for the actual development itself, that's been established by statute. We are not discussing that today.
And I think it only makes sense because, from the couple of affordable housing projects we've actually done, there's very few in this area. So these people don't have cars at all. That's why they need the bus. And so why have 2 parking spaces for a unit that has 0 cars? So it all makes sense, and so that's one of the reasons for my statement.
Mr. Chairman, you have no problem. I did a lot of development in South Florida. I made a bunch of millionaires, billionaires. Now I'm here making billionaires, trillionaires. So I am in full agreement with Bruce's comments. My parsing of the words is the word major. If it's a transit stop, it's a transit stop. Just make it a transit stop. Why are we adding the word major and putting things like intermodal in? If it's a transit stop for reducing pricing, parking, very valid concern.
Yeah, the reason why it's called major transit stop is that's the language that Live Local Act uses. We have to define major transit stop. So if you define a major transit stop as any bus stop, then we'll take that recommendation to the board.
I'll make that a motion.
Do we need to clarify the motion?
I think
the motion is just to revise the definition so that any bus stop would be qualify as a major transit stop.
Who seconded? Okay, we got a motion by Bruce, a second by Logan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
That passed.
That's all, folks.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.